So when I was a teenager, I found that I started getting really nervous whenever there was any kind of school presentation or just speaking to people. I became just an absolute mess. In fact, it got so bad that I would start to lose feeling in my hands and the feet. They'd start to go all tingly, and then I'd be getting pins and needles in them, and then basically they would go completely numb. My ears would also basically feel like they're popping, and I'd basically go deaf. It was basically like a mini migraine, really. So I'd get that if ever there was any kind of scenario where I had to speak in front of a large group of people. And it continued to get worse as I got older and then went to university. So when I was at university, when I first started, I thought there's some things I'm going to need to do to try and rectify this. So what I did was I bought something called Rescue Remedy, which I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's basically like a small jar of liquid, some kind of herbal remedy liquid, and it says on the label, like, drop a few drops under your tongue, and within a few seconds you should feel like way more relaxed, way more confident. It was basically snake oil. So first week at university, we had a thing called Freshers Week, which was basically an induction week for all the new people. And it was my first experiences of going clubbing, first real experiences of drinking, and basically one night when I went clubbing, I met a girl and she invited me back to her place, and I thought, oh shit, this could be the time when I'll be losing my virginity, I'll be having sex for the first time. And so I excused myself to the bathroom and put a couple drips of the Rescue Remedy, which I kept in my pocket, and found that after about 30 seconds that did nothing. My hands were going numb, my feet were going numb, I was starting to shiver and shake frantically. I thought, this is not an attractive appearance. So I quickly decided and then resorted to just downing the entire bottle of Rescue Remedy. And that is how I can 100% say that it has no effect, because I downed the whole bottle and it did absolutely nothing. Turned out I didn't need to worry about anything because she had no intention of sleeping with me anyway. She thought I was weird. When I was at university, I made the stupid decision very early on to change my degree and change it to drama, thinking that if I can just overcome the stage fright, which surely I'd be able to do doing drama every day, then I would be really good at it and I'd really enjoy it. But what I found at the same time was there was a thing called alcohol, and I found that alcohol seemed to do a pretty good job of numbing this kind of worry and nervousness and utter anxiety-filled stage fright fear. So I would start heavily drinking. So we would have sessions at 9 AM on Thursday mornings where we would have to do like warm-up exercises, perform in front of other people, do kind of drama-y activities like that. And so what I was doing at 8 AM was downing half a bottle of sours, which is a really sweet, really sugary alcoholic drink. And it was about 15% alcohol, so it was, you know, it wasn't nothing. So I would down about half a bottle of that in the morning while people were still asleep or would be waking up having breakfast. I would be in the kitchen that I would share with 13 other people in the small kitchen, just sitting there downing a half a bottle of sours. Because I drank sours because I basically had just started my alcohol adventure, and as a result wasn't able to drink proper alcohol. It doesn't taste nice. I still don't think it tastes nice. It tastes horrible. You don't drink alcohol for the taste. So I was going for just the sweetest, sugariest alcoholic drink I could, and downing so much of it. And then I would turn up to this workshop, seminar, lecture-y thing, drunk. I would show up drunk, and then I would do all the exercises pissed. So it did not go well at all. And the worst part was, in most cases, when I actually had to perform solo in front of everyone, didn't even help really, because I would still get really shaky, I would still get really nervous, and the alcohol basically did nothing. And what's worse is, as I was showing up drunk, which people could tell, and also I was like too nervous to engage with any of the actual work, people in the class would distance themselves from me. They would think that I was weird, drunk, not taking it seriously, and as a result they kind of ostracised me. So any group activity, I was usually the last to be picked, and found that I was doing a lot of the stuff on my own, which was only making it even worse, because now I had to do it on my own while nervous and slightly pissed. So while alcohol didn't make me any better at acting or really any better with my nerves, what it did do is make me drink a lot more alcohol. So I kind of was just downing bottle off bottle of alcohol constantly. And this all led to some kind of a big breakdown about 6 months later, where I then moved home, back home for about 2 months, just because I was in a not a great place. The problem was as I had taken all this time off during the year, during the school year, which was still going on, I had deadlines which were coming up, and one of these deadlines was a presentation that you had to do in front of all the other drama students, so all 300 other drama students, and you would do that in groups of 5, where you would have 20 minutes and you would all have about 4 minutes each to do a presentation. As I wasn't there for all that time, I wasn't put in any group, and so I basically messaged my the person in charge and said, okay, what do I do? Can I be put in a group or something? And they just said, oh, don't worry, you can do the 20 minutes on your own, which I think was just them being spiteful, in all honesty, because it was now 5 times the amount of work as everyone else had to do, and 5 times the amount of standing in front of all those people, talking and presenting for all that time, which obviously I was still terrible at. So in order to prepare for this, what I did was I filled up a bottle of Ribena, half with Ribena, half with vodka, and just sat there waiting for my turn. So the presentation was on multimedia theatre, and whilst slightly intoxicated, and more so as I was drinking more and more Ribena vodka, I made the smart decision that the presentation looked quite boring, so what I should do is remove any educational aspect from it and just replace it with a big load of things which I thought were funny. Make a load of jokes, just basically undermine myself. Because I thought, this is going to be 20 minutes and I'll be staring at 300 blank faces, so if I can get them to laugh, then that will hopefully alleviate my fear. Because when you're doing any kind of presentation, laughter is an immediate feedback. It's basically people giving you approval right there and then. And you usually get that with applause at the end, but that always seems forced and just seems like it's a custom and something which people will do regardless. Whereas laughter seems more involuntary and it seems more real. So I basically was desperate for people to laugh, and I thought that would make me less nervous. Also, as it turns out, this was quite a nerve-wracking thing, because there was a girl in a group, a few groups before me, who basically had a breakdown, hid behind the desk, cried, and then ran out. And she got a first, which is basically the highest grade you can get, because the people grading it felt sorry for her. I didn't get that treatment, despite the fact I'm going to assume that I was definitely equally, if not more, terrified. I had no feeling in my hands, no feeling in my legs. I was shivering uncontrollably, and the alcohol basically did nothing to numb any of that. So I went up and did the terrible jokes that I had planned, didn't do any of the stuff which was originally in my presentation, and then at the end I said, are there any questions? And then the person grading it put their hand up and said, yep, I've got a question. Did you just waste everyone's time? Which was not really something I had an answer for. I kind of just said, I hope not, and then just walked out and left. I was supposed to stay and watch all the other presentations, but I didn't. I just walked out and left. And so a few days later, I withdrew myself from the drama program and switched to a different degree, that being biology. However, in biology there were still presentations, and one time I had to do a presentation, and it was a group presentation, and I found out that one of the other people in my group were equally as nervous and had stage fright as me, and weren't going to be able to talk in front of people. So I stupidly persuaded him to go down my terrible route of, before the presentation, go and down a few shots of absinthe each. And I don't know if you know this, absinthe is like 70% alcohol. It's really, really strong alcohol, and it didn't do anything good. It was not a solution at all. And the other person in the group was rightfully annoyed that we'd showed up, you know, really drunk to this presentation. So at this point it was kind of getting out of control. I was nervous all the time. I basically just couldn't speak to anyone. I would kind of just avoid people, lock myself away in order to avoid speaking to people, and just becoming really nervous and stage frightful. So what happened was I thought I need to sort this out. So I basically did a process called flooding. So flooding is a psychological process where it's mainly used on phobias, things like rats, where basically if someone is scared of rats, they will put them in a room filled with rats. And they found that what happens is your fear response will rise really rapidly once you're first subjected to all the rats, all the fear response. But then after an amount of time of being subjected to all of this, what happens is your fear response starts to drop, and you start to become less and less afraid of this thing. It disassociates the response of the stimulus of the rats with the fear response, and you kind of just get used to it, and you have to deal with it. You have to face it head on. So I thought what I could do with that is I could join the Stand-Up Comedy Society, because, well, one, I clearly am desperate for people's affirmation through laughter, and I also thought this would be a good way to force myself to get over my stage fright. And so I went to the first few meetings and watched other people perform their stand-up, and I spent the next few days and weeks writing a set which I eventually had to perform in front of it was only 8 other people in the group. But before this I fell into my crux again and would down a few shots of Jägermeister and have some Jaeger bombs before I had to perform in front of these people, which again, it didn't help. But I kept thinking, well, it's doing something, and all that thing was it was making me drunk, which wasn't really helping me with the nerves or helping me in dealing with the pressure of performing in front of people. So I performed it and it went okay, and then progressively over time I then had to perform it again and again and again in front of these same people, changing bits of it, perfecting the routine, and then and having less alcohol each time, which was moving in the right direction. And then after this, we then had to perform it live in a bar in front of, I'd say, about 200 people. So, the day came when I had to do that, and I went to the bar about 5 hours early and just kind of sat there just waiting in terror. And I had some drinks, which I kept thinking to myself, I just need to get to a certain perfect level where I'm drunk enough to be confident, but not drunk enough to forget my routine, which I obviously went past, which was going to be problematic. And I did it, and here's the footage now.
I've never had a dog. I always wanted a dog. I've never allowed a dog because my dad, he was allergic to dog hair, animal hair, his own hair. He was quite important.
So yeah, while performing that, I was a good few cocktails and shots deep. And then basically I had to do the same scenario again a few months later, where I had to write a different comedy routine and then perform it again in front of a bar. So I did this again, did the same process, got quite drunk before, and it went okay.
It was quite the accomplishment at the time, I thought. She's a bit beaten up and a bit rough, but I'm proud of her. It's the Rainbow Swimming Award. This is in the Rainbow Swimming Award scheme, endorsed by Tony the Tiger there, as you can see. He's not saying it's great, you can tell he's thinking it. Yeah, this is, I'm proud of it, I'm proud of it, it's good. It was the 5 metres, that's the width of the pool, not the length. But,
I would say that doing the routine over and over again in front of these people, over time just kind of acted like flooding and made me less and less worried about it. And then about a week later I had to do my dissertation presentation for biology, because I was coming to the end of my course for that, and I did that no problem. It was because of doing the stand-up, it had helped me massively in performing in front of people. So then, to put one final nail in the coffin of my nervousness and stage fright, I decided to do a job where basically I was performing 24/7, and that job was teaching. I spent 2 years as a teacher. I was training for the first year and then teaching constantly 5 lessons a day in the second year. So in the first year I spent the first few months just watching teachers teach, learning how to teach, and then they kind of eased me in with me just doing sections of lessons where I was just doing like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Again, was terrified, but wasn't allowed to drink beforehand because I'm in a school, and drinking as a teacher in a school isn't really the best idea. So I kind of had to do it in a scenario where I wasn't allowed to drink. So I was doing the teaching and I was terrified to begin with. It was even more nerve-wracking because the audience who I was basically performing in front of didn't want to be there, didn't like me, actively wanted to talk and not listen to what I had to say, because I was in a school, I was a teacher. So this was harder. This was harder than any performance I'd done before, where I basically had people's attention and people being polite. None of that in school. They actively hated me. But more on top of that, I had to control their behaviour as well. So if people were talking and not listening to me, I had to force them into doing it. I had to punish them, I had to sanction them, I had to give them detentions, which I felt really uncomfortable doing. Especially because I believe I hadn't deserved the right to make them listen to me. I don't think they should have been listening to me, in all honesty. I'm just some idiot up front panicking, having a nervous breakdown in front of these kids. But eventually I did become better at it, and over time, towards the end of it, I wasn't worrying at all about doing it. It was kind of just something I had to do. I had done the flooding process and no longer associated the fear response with the stimulus of being in front of people. So I was just doing it it was no big deal at all. Something that I did find though when I was teaching, performing, doing stand-up comedy, doing any kind of presentation in my life, I found that when I went up to perform, I would essentially black out and auto drive me would take over. So if I was doing a performance or presentation, I would just kind of do it. I would be terrified as I was going up to doing it, but once I was doing it, I was just on autopilot to the extent that when I stopped performing, I wouldn't remember it. I would have basically blacked out and gone into autopilot where I essentially remember nothing and just let autopilot me take over. And I found that this seems to be a thing with a lot of performers, and they call it Dr. Show or things to that effect. And it essentially means that whatever scenario you're going through just before, however nervous you are, however worried you are, there is an instinctive response in you that takes over when you get up to perform, and it just takes over. It just kind of makes you do it. Because in the moments leading up to when you're doing it, if like it's a presentation and the people around you are doing it and you're counting down the people until it's you, your anxiety is going through the roof at this time. And you can do everything you can to try and slow down time. But in reality, it's gonna come, it's gonna happen, and once it's done, it's over for good. And this thing, Dr. Show, basically means that when you go up, your brain does it. It forces you to do it. And that's what I would recommend in any scenario. Just jump in and have a go at doing it, because no matter how terrified you feel beforehand, your body will just take over and get you through it. A good example of this is in the film We're the Millers, where Jason Sudeikis' character says in order to kiss someone, what you need to do is just not think about it, count down from 3, 3, 2, 1, and then just do it.
I mean, if you ever want to kiss a girl or ask her to go out, or actually, whenever you get scared about anything, you just do this. You just count to 3 and then do it. Because if you take too long, you'll start to overthink it and you'll just drive yourself crazy. Trust me, it'll change your life.
And I would absolutely agree with that, because you putting it off or delaying it is only gonna build up your own anxiety, own worry, own nervousness more and more. So you just need to just push yourself into that scenario and just do it, whether it is kissing a girl, performing in front of people, or whatever, because you will find that your body will just kind of take over and get you through it. And usually you won't even remember it. Because what I found is, unlike when you watch it on TV and there's a character standing up the front doing a presentation, having his little cards with all the notes written on it, and looking out to the sea of people who they're probably imagining naked, and none of that's really how it is. Certainly for me, I find that if you just kind of just start talking, your body will just continue talking and just get you to the end.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. Like an improv conversation. An improvisation.
So if there is something you're terrified of, then the recommendation would be to just do it. Because once you've done it a few times, then it really does just become not that much of a big deal. Whatever it is, you might not be good at it the first time, it might go horrendously, but it will end, you will get through it, and then you will be slightly more equipped to do it again the next time. And if you keep doing it over and over, it will become super duper easy. Even doing a YouTube video now is something which I have been putting off for a while, and I've just found that if I just do it, if I just force myself to do it, it will be a lot easier to just stare down a lens and just talk. So thank you very much if you got this far in the video, I really appreciate it. I've been Danny, this has been Cheaper Than Therapy, and please subscribe.